Good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us here at Merkle Meets. Today we have another great lineup. We have LexisNexis joining us today. Thank you, LexisNexis. They're going to show us a really cool product to add some identities or identity information to crypto information. So if you've been around crypto a long time, you understand the problem. The problem is that we can only get you so far with attribution. After that, we need some other tools to help us get some real identity. So this morning we have Zach and Maanas from LexisNexis, and we also have our very own Nirmal, who's our CTO and co-founder of Merkle Science. He's going to demo some of our products as well, and we're just going to have a good conversation and some demos between the two teams here and talk about how we can close the gap between tracing crypto and adding real identities to it. So I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go kind of around in a circle. I'm gonna start with Zach. The way I see it on my screen, I got Zach, and then I got Maanas, and I got Nirmal. So, Zach, I'm gonna go with you first. If you could do a quick intro. No demo yet. We'll get that in a minute. Just tell us who you are and what you're doing. We'll do Maanas and Nirmal, and we'll get started from there. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Hi, everyone. Zach Watkins. I'm a director of a solution consulting group here within LexisNexis Risk Solutions, particularly focused on our fraud and identity solution portfolio. My group and I support Maanas and team from typically a technical standpoint, working with exchanges and customers and fintechs, even e-commerce customers of ours and alliances partners, and leveraging our fraud and identity solution portfolio. We essentially have a platform that can seamlessly orchestrate a number of different types of checks. Where we'll be focusing today and what we're really excited about is how our linking from a digital identity perspective can provide a lot of insights in terms of the kind of off-chain interactions, in terms of real-time assessment of like folks who are being scammed or particularly being taken advantage of, or active mule accounts that may be then interacting with exchanges. So looking forward to working through that here today, and I'll turn it over to Maanas.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Robert and Nirmal, for having us here. Really excited. I'm Maanas Godugunur. I'm part of the fraud and identity team, market planning team, which is our market strategy team. So my focus is primarily on the e-commerce and payments industry, and obviously crypto is a very large portion of it. I was thinking about how far long ago did I start working in the crypto space. I was thinking about my first foray was, I think, almost 10 years back. I know Bitcoin and stuff has been there longer, but that's when we start seeing the ripples of the world coming in, and then you had Ethereum and all that good stuff in terms of trying to, um, you know, be a disruptor in the payments world. That was the primary purpose, and I think they're continuing. We are very excited with the cryptocurrency and how it's trying to disrupt, continuing to disrupt. But as Zach mentioned, we continue to look at how is identity becoming a challenge in this space, especially on-chain, off-chain. How do you merge that together? And also fraud and scams. How do you protect your customers? How do you make sure that your crypto wallet users are not losing their money or transferring money to someone that they should not? And I know Nirmal, your Merkle Science over here has some capabilities. So looking forward to this discussion. Thanks again. Nirmal, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Robert, and very excited to have you here, Zach and Maanas. For everyone else, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Nirmal. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Merkle Science. I oversee our product and technology teams, and I have a background in anti-fraud sciences. So started off my career at PayPal, and then worked for a payment startup in India. But over the last 13, 14 years of my career, I've primarily been in the anti-fraud space. So it's just preventing ATOs, credit card fraud, ACH returns, bad merchants. How do you solve these problems in the digital space? It's been around 6, 7 years since we founded Merkle Science. And I'm trying to bring all of my learnings from the traditional digital payment space into the cryptocurrency world, looking at trying to make it safer for all of its participants. How do you prevent illicit actors how do you prevent them from using cryptocurrencies? How do you protect consumers on the platform and so on? Very excited to have LexisNexis here and how we can show you some of the stuff we've got arranged for you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the intros. So if you're in the audience, you can see we have some very talented and very experienced people on the line here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with LexisNexis, Zach and Maanas. Why don't you give us a breakdown of what you have and how you think it's going to intersect with what we have, and then we'll let Nirmal jump in on do his part as well. So, Zach and Maanas, please go at it. Let's hear what you got to say.
Thanks, Robert. So I can kick it off, and Zach, please chime in. But LexisNexis Risk Solutions has been in business for 25 years. We've been in the space of fraud and identity for that many number of years to help customers, businesses, as Zach mentioned, right? Small, big financial institutions, e-commerce, retailers, make better decisions, leverage our risk signals to, meet their business model risk requirements, right? So we've been in this space. We have grown organically and inorganically through the last 25 years through various strategic acquisitions and also, through investment in our own product portfolio. One of the products that we invested and we saw this change is in terms of how many folks were primarily interacting with their customers, the banks, financial institutions digitally. One of the major acquisitions is Threat Metrics. And that then changed that was in 2018. In 2020, we acquired LexisNexis Email Age, now Email Age, LexisNexis Email Age. And then we acquired IDA to help improve and enhance our fraud intelligence, fraud synthetic identity capabilities. And recently we acquired Risk Narrative platform and also BehaviorSec, which basically informs how an individual is interacting. Everybody has their own way of how they use their phones, and everybody has their own unique digital fingerprint, right? You'll swipe in a particular way, you'll type in a particular way. So building a profile using those behavioral analytics is something that we felt was very important as folks were really trying to understand who's behind that interaction. So this is a quick overview of what LexisNexis Risk Solutions has been doing over the last 25 years in this space. And we are very excited to share how our products and our tools can be leveraged in the on-chain, off-chain, and how it can make crypto ecosystem safer for all parties involved. Zach?
Yeah, and building on what Maanas noted, right, we have a broad range of solutions in our fraud and identity portfolio. There's really an underlying platform that can interface with all of these solutions. And so as Maanas gave that a great kind of history of the acquisitions, what we're essentially have done is have an end-to-end stack that can be seamlessly tied in along the user journey. So if you think of like a registration with an exchange, not only are we able to say, where is this user at this point in time on the globe from a digital identity perspective? How are they interacting with their device? And is this typical for the users who typically leverage this experience, right? So we're looking at device, location, but behavioral biometrics and the interaction with the user experience. We can then look at, is that also associated to the PII in a safe privacy by design manner? From that level, we can look at our public proprietary data assets to do like a KYC check or a KYB check, right? Based on the information that the user is supplying, which then can tie into an authentication method that can take shape of a one-time passcode, knowledge-based questions, document authentication. We're relatively use case agnostic in terms of how this platform is leveraged, and we'll show that here later. Where we really want to hone in today is, we're really only as good as our data sources in a way, right? And the digital identity network, the consortium, really doesn't have any geographic limitation, and we're relatively use case agnostic in terms of how this solution can be interfaced with. So what's really great in terms of working with Merkle Science is getting the ability to have an assessment of on-chain behavior and tying that to all of the entry points from a digital identity perspective with an exchange or a fintech or anyone who's leveraging anything from the crypto space. We can give real-time associations of, well, where was this actor at any given point in time? Because at the end of the day, we all have a digital identity. We all have a footprint. We all interact with sites or services that leverage this threat metric solution. So we can give a lot of great day zero context and to play nicely.
Well, I think, Zach, you mentioned a very good point. One is that we are a couple of things, right? Missed. We are a global risk solution provider, right? So we have to recognize that fraudsters are not only attacking within a particular country or region, but they are attacking across borders, and they are coming with various different IPs, devices, etc. So another important aspect of is how our solutions think about a digital identity. Usually people will associate digital identity saying that I need to do a device risk assessment. But how we hone in on digital identity is everybody has their own digital footprint. For example, I at myself will have like 3 or 4 devices that I leverage. Like I may have a couple of iPads, I may have my phone, I may use my wife's phone sometimes. So you have like 3 or more devices that you're coming from. And also you are either interacting with a particular website, you're coming from a particular IP, you have certain shipping and billing addresses that you have associated, certain credit card information associated. So all this becomes your digital identity. So we do not use device as the center, but actually we build it around this digital identity profile. So I think that's what makes us really unique. And talking about the scale of our network, the digital identity network, just last year, we crossed 100 billion transactions in 1 year. So we are seeing transactions globally of that scale. So we are able to really gather some very, granular insights as to what is risky, where they are coming from, what is risky behavior, what are the, velocities associated with each attribute, what makes one more risky than the other. So there are just these immense number of things that our customers are able to do, leveraging the platform and creating their own policies that are required, that is very custom. And we have to recognize that it's not one per customer, right? You have large customers who will have different types of operations within a particular region or different use cases. So everything can be managed through that particular platform. So, and we brought all our F&I assets, when I say F&I, I mean fraud and identity assets that can be orchestrated through this platform. So we should not limit ourselves to just digital identity, but if you have some PII specific elements, data that you want to validate, you can bring in some other products together and stitch them together and build your own custom policies. Um, in the day of AI, ML, etc., machine learning, we have been doing predictive AI for a long time, right? Using our data, and so using that with some open smart learning and also adaptive technologies, we call it adaptive technologies, which are basically leveraging machine learning, but automatically adapting to your changing fraud portfolio profile. I think those are the type of things that we have been investing in and would love to showcase and share that with you. So thanks again.
Yeah, we'll get to that here real shortly because I'm interested. I want to hear this, and I'm listening to what you guys are saying, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to dump off some devices. I got way too many devices here, uh, so I got to get rid of some of these things. They're tattling on me all the time. Anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch over to Nirmal real quick, and if I can have you guys think about this one question, because I'm gonna get back to you on this, and when we're gonna let Nirmal go through his talk about what we do at Merkle Science. And then I want you guys to think about this. How does that intersection look? How do we take yours and this, and what Merkle's going to talk about, and how do we blend that together and make it a seamless process? So, Nirmal, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about Merkle Science and what we're doing over here? You're on mute, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So what do we do at Merkle Science? So I think when you think about the crypto universe, you hear a lot of buzzwords. You hear things like scalability, interoperability, user experience. These are all areas I think the ecosystem is generally investing in. One area that's somehow not as large a buzzword is identity, right? And it's an important problem that we need to solve, because how are you going to convince regulators? How are you going to convince users that this is safe technology or safe ecosystem if you're not really sure who the other person is on your transaction, right? An example of this is, I think a couple of months ago, the industry saw its largest cryptocurrency heist, right? I think $1.4 billion was stolen. And despite the entire ecosystem working in tandem, hundreds of investigators, companies around the world collaborating, trying to seize these funds, we were only able to recover 5 to 10% of the stolen funds, right? And I think when I saw that metric, I was like, man, we as a company have so much more to do, right? If all of the data is publicly available on chain, how will we not able to act on it faster and ensure greater recovery, right? So this is primarily our motto at Merkle Science. How do you de-anonymize transactions, and how do you bring trust into the cryptocurrency ecosystem? And yeah, so largely everything we do, we've been building to that. I think many of you are probably aware of what we do, probably use our products. So we're constantly looking at how we can expand the scope of identity services that we can offer. So I think at this current point in time, we analyze a cryptocurrency wallet, and we can tell you what kind of activity that wallet has been involved in. But we're looking to expand the scope of that. Can we also pinpoint a location with an IP address, right? Can we also maybe point out a social media profile, things like that? I mean, all within the realms of what is allowed from a regulatory perspective. But how do you remove this cloak of supposed anonymity that blockchains give you by bringing real-world off-chain information and merging them with on-chain information?
Excellent. That is the age-old question. I mean, but Maanas, you and I have been in crypto probably about the same amount of time, since about 2014 or so. And the question almost from day one is, how do we know who owns that? How do we know? It's more than just a string of characters. We want to add a name or a geolocation to that. So with that in mind, and we talked a little bit about what we do at Merkle, and I'll sum it up in a few sentences. At Merkle Science, we do tracing and tracking and risk scoring and wallet monitoring for the crypto universe. Essentially, we do 21 different blockchains, all the most popular ones. We allow investigators to look forensically across the blockchain and trace flows of funds. But we still have the same problem. We can only add attribution to what we know. And then, of course, I've been posed to me many, many times in some of my different ventures, how do we essentially whitelist a customer to use crypto? How do we do that? Do we have them give us addresses and say you can only interact with these addresses, or do we blacklist some addresses, or do we blacklist customers? How do we know? How do we build that profile so that when you're onboarding something at a KYC or an AML, compliant institution, which we hope everybody in crypto will become one of these days, how do we know? How do we know this customer? How do we know their crypto dealings? Is a lot different than maybe their fiat dealings, right? With their, the hard cash. So, Maanas, Zach, please take us through your solution. Let's see if you can answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just grab control of my screen, and I think the best way to showcase this is probably how one of our customers may leverage this solution, right? So let's start with just maybe like a banking customer. One thing to note is I'm largely going to be showcasing our threat metrics solution, which is our digital identity solution. As Maanas mentioned, obviously, if we're onboarding a customer, there's so much more we can do, or if our customers are onboarding customers, right, there's so much more they can do in terms of sharing the actual PII or business information that's being collected during that interaction for us to then do like a KYC check, a KYB check, or anything along those lines. So what I'm going to show here is just an example experience. Hopefully you can see my screen. If you can't, just chime in. Where it's a familiar interaction that we all have. Maybe we're logging into an account to check our balance, for an example. We are typically going to be used not just as an API-based solution, there's a front-end component. We need to somehow establish a connection to the device through the browser, and that's through like a tag placement or perhaps an SDK embedded into a native app, if you think like a rideshare company or something along those lines. Just to give you a sense of the size and scope of our consortium, these tags are on about 100,000 different websites today. So any one of us is interacting with these tags in kind of like a first-party manner. And I really want to stress that this is done in a privacy by design approach. We're only collecting what the browsers actually allow us to collect. We're pulling IP address information, how the user's interacting with the experience. You'll see if I click on a particular field, well, what field value was that named? How long did I spend on it, and all of that. So if I go in and I actually log into my account, there's an API request that's fired off into the background. And what the bank or whoever is leveraging us is able to pull from the consortium is the context. So they've only seen that interaction. They saw a user interact with the experience, they input their username and password, and yeah, they could probably pull what device, what location are they using. What we were able essentially to pull is the device and network context, but we can resolve it to a unique identity itself. Because we have what you saw here, all of this data in the background with a clear box approach, each one of these snapshots, I just did one API request, we receive 350 plus million of them a day, is essentially updating all of the attributes and entities to a unique identifier. And we can pull context to say, well, this is a known combination of attributes. This device identifier has been associated with this PII before. It's trusted in a financial services industry. If we were to then move to another type of interaction, like perhaps a crypto transaction with an exchange, you'll see there's a lot of different fields we can take on. It's the same API request. It's just additional information that can be provided to us. So let's say in this case, now I'm supplying like a wallet and I'm making a transfer and I'm going to transfer like 2,500 XRP. I'm going to hit that same endpoint. I'm going to provide more information and I'm going to action on this because of the context that we got back was negative context. We know that this is perhaps confirmed with mule activity across our various consortiums. So like the UK banks, for example, all collaborate with this digital identity network to flag known scams or flag known mule activity. And the best part about it is if you're thinking of like Monero or mixers or something where we have no context around the actual wallet or any history around it, there's likely going to be some context we can pull from our consortium around the various attributes that we have. So like a device identifier, for example, we could have seen this same device in North Korea at some given time from an actor who maybe was signing up for a streaming service or doing something as part of their digital interaction. We flagged that identifier with a sanctions geolocation risk flag. They could be on a VPN right now out of New York, for example. We have no way of knowing what the origination is for that particular event, but we know there's a flagged context around that device identifier. So the beauty of this is we can essentially pull context from all of the various entities we have and produce them visually. So when individual is doing an investigation within our tool, they can see that LexID digital. So in this case, we've resolved to a LexID digital. We can see that we have a pretty high confidence we're resolving to the correct digital identity, but it has a low trust score because of the interactions across our consortium. And so what you see here are all of the attributes that maybe the exchange has shared with us at the time of onboarding, for example. But what they can get in return is the digital identity context. So what I've toggled here is all the information in our consortium that's associated to this particular digital identity. You can see it's pretty egregious, right? It paints a very different picture. I can then look at how everything is related to one another. So they provided a phone on input to us to do some sort of an assessment on it. We could do our KYC type of solutions and resolve to the identity from a physical identity standpoint. But from a digital identity perspective, you can see this phone is associated to a whole lot of other account numbers, for example, and the various device identifiers. So it's great because we have a nice investigative tool that folks can leverage, and it's very similar to some of the tools that Merkle Science has as well. But this just gives you the visibility and the day zero context if you think of like just a day zero interaction with any sort of digital experience. This is something that is leveraged when people buy things on e-commerce sites. It's when they sign up for streaming services. It's when they get a policy with an insurance company. In the background, ThreatMetrix is essentially updating all of these associations in real time. And even if we're not able to fingerprint a device, we can still take an IP address or other attributes and pull those associations in a safe privacy by design manner. So I think the last point I would like to leave with this is this may lead to questions on, wow, it's a consortium, it's give to get. What are the privacy implications here? Essentially, everything that we receive, as we process it, we're salting and hashing it multiple times. And in our consortium, it's really just a bunch of hash values. And so we're looking at the associations from hashes to hashes. So there's no way to say, here's an IP, give me all the addresses you have. You can simply say, here's an IP, how many addresses, and how often were they seen, and over what period of time and what industry, and more importantly, is there any tagged context? Have any one of our customers gone through and marked something as confirmed fraud with the varying context? This is a known mule account or something along those lines. So I know I went through relatively quickly, but I definitely want to leave time for Nirmal to kind of walk through the Merkle solution as well. And hopefully this helps paint a picture of the benefit of leveraging the two of our solutions together, right? We have the ability to take that information at that point in time. Maybe it's a wallet, some name, address, phone information, whatever is available from that particular customer interaction. And we can even pass that over to Merkle to pull even more context around that wallet and perform a risk assessment there. So there's quite a bit of potential here in blending these two solutions together at any given moment during the digital interaction. So with
Yeah,
that said,
that's super interesting. I'm looking at that going, wow, that's a lot of information, you know. And I was just about to ask and say, okay, so I see all this information. What are you doing to get it? You know, because there's going to be a lot of privacy regulation around that as well. And you answered the question, which is, you know, you're hashing it all out, so it's not name to name, it's hash to hash pretty much. It appears that you're not collecting PII. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's supplied to us, and that's the benefit of the platform is we can hand that PII off to a product like a KYC product that needs it due to like a name, address, social, you know, verification, for example, or a deceased check. But as we're processing it and pulling in our consortium data, we're going to salt and hash it multiple times, and that's what will be retained in this global consortium. And that's frankly the reason why we have so many customers and competitors of one another who are sharing this information, because it's done in a safe way. Where we've taken it to another level, though, is the concept of like a consortium, a sub-consortium, where like customers have entered into an agreement using our platform to explicitly share that information. So if you think of like a bank, they could flag something as a confirmed mule account, and then another bank can see who added that, right? But that obviously requires a lot more, you know, from like a legal and agreements type of standpoint. So there's a lot of features available with that. Yeah.
A lot of attorneys looking at that right now, I'm sure. Maanas, you want to add to that?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, as much as we are privacy centric, our solutions are always focused on protecting consumer data, right? It's never, we have something called as permissible purpose, and fraud and identity based on our legally is, you know, a permissible use case. So whenever you are thinking about protecting data, or we are worried about PI information, we should always think about the context of what you're using and why you're using. So in some cases, having PI information actually protects the customer, because you need to check if there's any change, if there's an impact, if somebody has stolen someone's SSN identity, is somebody creating a synthetic identity. So there are some aspects that I think that's very important, and we should be able to do that. But I think coming back to the concept of consortium, it's all about shared intelligence. Let's fight fraud together. Fraudsters are teaming up. Let's team up together. That's the thought process there.
Right, and Nirmal hit on it earlier. You know, even though the Bybit hack $1.4 billion, even though it was very public on the blockchain, you know, even though we had a huge consortium, if you will, I mean, if you use that word again, of people, investigators looking at, we were still only able to recover 10-15% of the stolen funds. So there's a lot of room there to build those partnerships back together.
Yes, 100%.
Nirmal, your turn, sir. You want to take us through how you see our products marrying up with what Zach and Maanas just showed to us?
Yeah, definitely. So I think LexisNexis has been doing this for 25 years. So we've only been doing this for 5 years, but risk products typically evolve in a very similar way. We've got two tools pretty much very similar to what LexisNexis offers. I think LexisNexis is primarily looking at email IDs, phone numbers, bank accounts, other kinds of PII information. We offer data enrichment services on cryptocurrency wallet addresses and transactions. So we have two products. One is called Compass. This is more of our API or data product. It's more meant for real-time monitoring or use cases. So if you're an organization which is conducting cryptocurrency payments, there are a few checkpoints at which you'd want to get a risk score. An example of these checkpoints could be at onboarding or sign up. When you onboard a new user, if they share their wallet addresses with you, you might be interested in understanding what's the risk score associated with these wallets. Another checkpoint at which you're probably interested in a risk score is when you're doing the transaction, whether it's a deposit or a withdrawal, you're probably interested in getting a risk score for the counterparty wallet address. So the first product we have is Compass, and this is more meant for integration with your payment systems. The second product is what we call Tracker. This is a forensics or a visualization tool, and it's meant to visualize the flow of funds in the cryptocurrency network. I can give you a quick overview of these products, right? So on Compass, or whether it's our Compass API, you would generally search for it using a wallet address, and we're able to pull up certain kinds of information. There's metrics like wallet balances, transactions that the address has participated in. But broadly, I think payments companies are interested in this metric called exposure, where we are able to identify if there are any risks associated with this wallet address. So in this example, we have been able to identify that the wallet address that we've screened, for example, is owned by a certain darknet vendor. How do we do this? We have an intelligence team that's gathering all this kinds of information. We have partners submitting data to us. So we've got a multi-channel approach where we are gathering intelligence. And then we've got our data science teams who are building algorithms and heuristics to expand this intelligence and make it available to you. So if you look at this address in particular, the address that you searched for was this one, but we're able to tell you who received the payment immediately, but we're also able to do network analysis, and a few hops away, we're able to identify where the funds are coming from. Now, using this data, you can couple it with our rule engine to sort of create alerts, and then have these API results integrated into your payment system. And using this, you're either able to block transactions in real time, or you can queue up these addresses for manual review later, right? So this is for a real-time system. And then for postmortem, or say you've got a request from law enforcement, or say a customer has said, hey, I've been scammed. And if you're interested in understanding the flow of funds in the network, we've got a visualization tool. You can think of it as a blockchain explorer, which probably has a lot more data than is generally publicly available, right? So the way you'd interact with this tool is by clicking on nodes and links, and you pull up all kinds of information, such as where is the address received funds from? Is there any publicly available OSINT? Are there other law enforcement agencies in the world who are also looking at these addresses, and so on? So by using a combination of Compass and Tracker, which is our API product and our tracing tool, cryptocurrency businesses should be able to improve the digital identities that they're building for their users. So when you're looking at how any organization would build digital identities, at minimum, you're collecting emails, phone numbers. You're probably also collecting KYC documents to extract other fields like country, verify their name, and so on, right? Now, illicit actors might not necessarily be distinguishable from licit actors using only these kinds of information. And this is where companies like Merkle Science and LexisNexis are required to enrich your data sets with additional information, right? So LexisNexis would take your phone numbers and email IDs and give you additional flags, which give you a sense of risk. And we could take in wallet addresses and transactions and give you an additional sense of risk associated with these users. And I think that's that. And it just
Okay, so that leads me to another question, and you guys probably get tired of me asking questions, but I think this is really kind of the important one. I envision, it being an exchange and working in the compliance, and I'm thinking to myself, if I have something like Tracker running where I'm screening addresses and or Compass actually screening transactions, how do we make that combination to where we're putting your information with LexisNexis? So I have a customer that does a transaction. I can see it clearly, address to address, but I want to add device information on both sides of that, because that's going to give me a better idea of kind of like the actor. What's the acting score? Overall, what's the risk am I looking at? I can generate a new crypto address in a fraction of a second, right? And it'll come back with a neutral score of 0 pretty much, because there's no history. But if I have device information, which is a totally different animal, um, how do I manage that in one platform? You guys got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to look at this, right? I think there's kind of the investigative side of it, right, and using the tools and looking after the fact, but then there's kind of the real-time assessment piece of this. So from our standpoint, we have a platform, we have a rules engine. I know Nirmal had kind of touched on that as well. We have the ability to kind of make an external call out. So if we're at a point where, someone is perhaps funding or perhaps pulling information, and that exchange wants to receive an assessment, they can provide information to us. They can include the wallet information with us. We may have context around the wallet, but we're largely going to be looking at the digital identity as a whole. What device are they using? What location? How are they behaving with that experience, as well as the PII? During that processing, we can actually pass that wallet over to Merkle Science, right, and make that request to pull that added context. So it's really up to kind of the level of customization that our mutual customers would want in terms of having all of this aggregated into a single decision or score, and we be the orchestrators, but there's nothing stopping them from orchestrating it themselves, right, and reaching out to each of us respectively. So I think there's a lot of different options there. One thing that you did note that jogged a thought here for me, Robert, is what's also important is knowing, is someone potentially being scammed? I think that's always the biggest challenge too, where it is their digital identity, it is their device, everything else is legitimate, but they're being coerced, right? And that's where we have to pull in added context around how are they behaving in this experience as compared to how they would typically behave. And so we can obviously branch a little bit beyond that into, well, is there an active call in place? Are they one-handed typing? Are they not necessarily typing from memory? Are they perhaps being fed information, right? And so, yeah, it could be maybe a first time like newly generated wallet that's being input, but how they're behaving at the time of doing that particular interaction is key. And so we can pull that context in as well.
So that brings up one more question around how they're typing. It's amazing how these little things spawn thoughts, right? But yeah, if you look at, like, I get a lot of scam messages. People are like, "Oh, what were you doing last night?" or "How was the club?" or something like that. And it's the intro to a romance scam, right? It's how they make that initial contact. Can your product recognize kind of the syntax of misspelled words or words how they might be spelled in like Chinese converted to English, or English converted to Chinese, or UK English versus US English? Can you recognize that kind of syntax and score that?
So yes and no. It's obviously we have a privacy first approach, so we don't necessarily pull the exact values that are being typed in, right? But we're looking at certain key presses or how long they're spending, or are they performing corrections. You can also pull what the language settings on the device are and what the time zone settings on the device are. Does it match
There you go.
what the IP is saying that they are at this point in time, right? So there's a lot of information we can pull, but we kind of infer based on the overall assessment that we're performing. So it may not be down as granular to as what they're literally the values are that are being typed in, right? Because we want to be sensitive to what we can collect. And sometimes the configuration may be that we want to keep it masked, right? But we can definitely pull in how they're interacting. Is it more like a from memory interaction, or is it something that's already auto-filled or auto-completed in the device because it's been there before? And certainly is it one hands or two hands, or other contexts that may lead us to believe that someone else is perhaps feeding them information to put in.
Yeah, very interesting. I was thinking kind of more broadly on the like fingerprinting a group location of devices, like a scam call center or something like that. How do you fingerprint that as a group and then say all these identities are located here and they're part of this scam group? So,
No,
but I would imagine that's probably down the line.
no, actually, Robert, we did a data scientist did a study, and this was more on human trafficking. It's on our website also,
Mhm.
if you look at it. And what the analysis suggested was, I didn't know if you were aware, but your phone actually acts like a barometer. And so it'll basically know whether you're in a higher location, like from a altitude location, or lower. And so what happened was we were looking at all the data that we received that this was potential scam. And then because you were not looking at it as a 3D, but you're just looking at it as a 2D, the data scientist was like, this doesn't make sense. How is this happening over here? And then eventually they leveraged the altitude data that was available in the device, and they realized, oh, this is coming from a mountainous region. And so we were able to locate, and actually this is more theoretical, but it can be implemented practically, that this was coming actually from the, southeastern region, Cambodia, etc., the mountainous regions, that these scam signals came through, these payments came through. So we were actually, it's a paper out there which is published, but it's very interesting because what you were referring to was scam centers. And we have to also recognize that there's magnetic field. So you also can, based on the device signals, know that is another device right next to it. And you can then figure out whether there's a click farm also out there. So these are things that are available from a data perspective. We just need to bring it out and productionalize it. But this is actively being worked on. But these are the type of things that we learn almost every day as we look at more and more data and what's happening.
Yeah. That is super interesting. And that's exactly where I
Yeah.
was getting at, the scam centers, because it's the,
Yeah.
the latest IC3 report came out from the FBI, and the amount of money lost from the Western world to, Asian, we'll just call it transnational crime, is just phenomenal. $16.6 billion, which is a drop in the hat to money laundering, of course, but
And that is only reported.
yeah, that's only reported. Yeah, so you're
right?
talking, you can double that, right? Probably
And
maybe even
easily,
more.
easily, absolutely.
And the thing about it is people are losing their entire life savings. I mean, that's their entire life.
We
is
are in
just
the
being
largest, we are
erased.
in the age of largest wealth transfer.
Yeah.
$124 trillion from now through 2048. And through various generations, boomers, through Gen Xers, through millennials, so we are seeing a largest transfer of wealth, and the fraudsters, the scammers know this, and people lost a lot of money to investment scams, and most of them are crypto scams, right? So we have to recognize that this is a challenge for all your customers, right? Protecting them is important. But I agree with you,
That's
Robert.
right.
It's a big issue.
Yeah, it's right. And to bring it back to the topic of the day, this is why we need collaboration between companies like LexisNexis, who you guys are doing some awesome work. I'm very, my mind is blown by what you can do. And then, of course, between Merkle Science, who's, we really have figured out the blockchain space and analytics, and we're always looking to go that next step to make it better, to identify people scamming people and put a stop to it, or at least try to mitigate it as best as possible. And a lot of times that means, if we can't stop it up front, to recognize where it came from and stop it on the back end, or at least try to recover something on the back end. So very, very interesting stuff. Nirmal, can you want to jump in here or anything?
Yeah. So I think from preventing illicit crimes, scams, etc., right? I think even from a technology perspective, at least in the crypto world, we're just getting started. I think we've got our current generation of companies, we've got one solution, but I think the next generation of solutions, right? It's going to move more towards fingerprinting. So it's larger. You're collecting more data points, pretty much like what I think Zach showed us, right? So you embed JavaScript tags on your payment pages. So imagine whenever anyone's making a transaction on MetaMask, this JavaScript tag is collecting all of their device information and it's linking it with their wallet, right? Now, the next time they go on an exchange, for example, Coinbase, and Coinbase has got this tag embedded as well, right? So this user is going to have the same device ID, right? And now, like how I think Zach showed us that with a device ID, they're able to pull up related email addresses, phone numbers, physical addresses, right? Soon, you'll also be able to do this with cryptocurrency wallets. So from a cryptocurrency wallet, on Tracker right now, I think we only show the flow of funds in the cryptocurrency space, but I think it's only a couple of years before which we'll probably soon have PI information for things like email addresses, right? So right now you can only join addresses, but it's only a matter of time before you can also say, hey, who owns this address? What is the approximate geolocation, right? These are all, I think these technologies are fairly commonplace in digital payments, right? Whether it's credit cards, bank transfers, fingerprinting is is fairly mature technology, and it's used to prevent fraud in that universe. And it's just that cryptocurrency is so new, it's just 10, 20 years old. We've not yet brought in fingerprinting technology, at least not as a consortium, right? We're not sharing this insights across the ecosystem. If I've got a user with a certain fingerprint and someone else has got another address with the same fingerprint, the ecosystem needs to be able to say that, hey, these two distinct addresses, which haven't been clustered to traditional blockchain analytics, are actually the same user, right? So when we started the company, this was one of the directions we generally wanted to grow into, right? How can you start associating fingerprints with cryptocurrency wallet information? Because that is one of the easiest ways to, I mean, we talk a lot about blockchain, wallet clustering, etc., right? But they have their limits. I think this digital fingerprinting, when this has mass widespread adoption, you're going to see a fairly significant improvement on how we tackle scams, for example, right? Or fraud in general. So this is the next big innovation we are looking forward to in the blockchain analytics space.
So do you think, sorry, Robert, I have a question for Nirmal because
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Or maybe Robert, you can also help answer. Do you think this innovation will be spurred by the community itself, or do you think this will require some regulatory intervention?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, we have two different sides of the crypto coin here, and if you've been in crypto anytime, you understand that there's the true technologist. I mean, they're true like textualists. They stick to the word, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the I'm gonna call them globalists, but that's probably not the right word. The people who want crypto to spread around the world and become the use case, right? But those people generally understand that regulation is the only way it can happen. While you're a true textualist over here, they want to keep intermediaries out. So two sides of the coin. I think overall, the people who understand regulation is going to be required will win out at the end of the day. I think we'll have some upset people over it, but I think we'll have good regulation eventually. And I think we'll see this space mature because we are very nascent still. And even though we've been around 10, 11 years, which is nothing, it's a flash in the pan, we have a long way to go. And as Nirmal just hinted to, this is how we're going to get there. We have to continue to drive technologies that help us unmask bad actors, is what it comes down to.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. I hope that was it.
Yes, absolutely.
I can add in as well. I think we're already seeing at least large enterprises do it, right? When you talk about some of the largest companies in the space, Coinbase, Binance, we're fairly certain that they do fingerprinting, right? And why do they need to do it? I mean, they get so many support tickets, right? And one of the best ways to prevent your customers complaining that, hey, I've been phished, I lost money, right, is to just do proactive fraud detection. So some of the largest enterprises in the crypto space definitely already use fingerprinting, right? And it's a matter of time. And I think it's something the industry will do on their own when they see the benefits, right? Customer protection, you're going to have lesser support workload, you're getting fewer requests from law enforcement. So that's something I think the industry will pick up. There's definitely education. This is newer technology, right? At least in the space. So it will definitely require education, but I don't think it needs to be pushed through with a lot of force.
Understood. That's a good point. Very good point. That makes sense. That they are driven by their own needs to service their customers.
I agree. I don't think regulation is going to make them do it. I think they're probably well down the road of doing it. Anything they can do to keep themselves safe as a business and keep their customers safe is probably on the table. So you would think, right? Gentlemen, we have 10 minutes left. I'm going to go around real quick for last thoughts, and then we'll open them for question and answer, about 5 minutes or so. So, Zach, thoughts on what we talked about? Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's been a great session. I really appreciate it, and thank you for having us. I think there's definitely a lot of potential here, right? We all work directly with a lot of these exchanges, right? And for future collaboration between the two of us, I think can only help in terms of being able to bridge the gap versus from the on-chain and off-chain type of interactions in a safe privacy by design manner. I think One thing to note too, and Maanas, I think we might be sharing this. We kind of publish our own cybercrime report. There is a couple interesting case studies there. We're happy to kind of direct folks to in terms of how we can look at different like crypto mule accounts and financial like banking like mule accounts and their interactions and how we're able to support those. So definitely check those out.
Excellent, excellent. Manas.
No, I want to say thank you again. This was definitely very I mean, the entire process of us preparing and coming together, etc., obviously kind of rekindled the joy of crypto and what's there and what blockchain is. I think people were very excited for the blockchain technology. Bitcoin obviously changed how we think about money and how we should transfer money and how it can be safer, better. So I think this just furthers the journey that I started 10 years back in terms of how do we make it faster, better, and more secure for the customers to exchange value, right? Whether it be through smart contracts or it's through actually cryptocurrency. So either way, we need to find a way of how do we secure this ecosystem. So thank you.
Very good. Nirmal, sir.
Yeah, no, I think it's been great collaborating with the two of you. I was fairly excited when I heard LexisNexis was around, right? I've always thought about this problem. How do you solve the identity problem in cryptocurrency, right? And I think as the founder of this company, right, it's what is the next 10x big improvement we can make as a company to make the ecosystem safer, right? And that's definitely one of the things that does drive me. And it's excellent when we can partner with some of the well-established names in this space.
Yeah, excellent. And the overarching theme there, I heard each one of you say it, is to make this space safer. And that's really what we want to do. So I do have two questions to throw out here. The first one is from Alessandro. And he asking, is your product able to demix and exchange? So can you demix and exchange? I can answer that, but I'm gonna leave it up to LexisNexis, and if you want me to, I'll answer it next.
From our standpoint, because of our privacy by design approach, we essentially are kind of agnostic to the use case. So the short answer would be no. It's really, unless there's context that we have in our consortium around it, we would really be looking towards the non-wallet information to pull in the context over, well, what led to this particular interaction, or what context around this digital identity can we kind of provide to help with additional information to go off of from a risk assessment standpoint.
All right, thanks. So Alessandro, I will answer your question from a blockchain perspective. And that is, it depends on the exchange. If there's a decentralized exchange, meaning everything is on the blockchain and maybe have some swaps from one chain to another, the answer is yes, we should be able to demix that. It may take some work with our engineers, but we should be able to. If it's a centralized exchange like Coinbase or something like that, the answer is no. And that's because Coinbase and some of the larger exchanges, once the funds flow in there on the blockchain, they're essentially held in pool funds, and they're not designated to your own private wallet address. So they put it offline essentially, and that's for your protection more than anything because they have a robust custody program there. Nirmal, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yep, thank you. And the last question I have here is from Sovic, is can we do risk analysis of a smart contract like an airdrop scam or a wallet connect scam? Basically, can we do some smart analysis on that? Can LexisNexis help out with that?
I think that's the benefit of having the context from the consortium, right? It's really, well, what was the interaction that led up into it from a user experience standpoint? And so was there known kind of bad activity prior based on the digital identity that's initiating or a part of that particular interaction? So then we can pull in the added context that, hey, yeah, this is a digital identity that's associated to several other, known bad activity. And that could take shape in either from like a compliance standpoint or based on certain regions that they've interacted with, that maybe it's from an OFAC sanction standpoint. shouldn't be doing business with, or it could be, just context that, financial institutions has flagged this device, IP, email, whatever, with a recent mule activity, right? And it explicitly been, notified it as, or flagged that context as such.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So not really blockchain related or smart contract related, but device related on who might have launched it or used it, or some type of attribution back to that contract, right?
Yeah, and that's where I
Externally.
think we're excited with kind of where's that intersection, right? It's where's the user initiating that behavior? It could be like through an exchange, it could be through a particular service. If we can pull our context into it, and then the context that you have as well, it really gives really a full picture of the full interaction.
So
Excellent.
we have something called as an account number, right, Zach? So if they start providing that, we in smart contract number or a smart contract wallet, then that can act as an account number, and then we start. I mean, it's all about having a placeholder for that data, and we do have that,
Yeah,
and
and
that can
that's
then build various. You can build various intelligence around it, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the future where we would like to get, right? We have great coverage in certain regions where financial institutions are sharing that information with us. Same with like the exchanges that we work with are sharing that information with us. Ideally, and the more that we're able to interact both of our organizations together and our customers leveraging both of us, we would get more input data specifically around those values to provide even more context, which would be great.
Excellent. I have one last question here from Eden, and I think this is probably the crux of what we're talking about here. He says, "Can you match PIIs to a wallet or the opposite way around?" Man, I'd love it if we could ever do that. I mean, there's probably a lot of privacy information, regulation around that, but can we match PII to a wallet or opposite way around? Finding wallets that are connected to a specific PII. And how do you do it? I don't think you want to give away the secret sauce, but is it possible to put someone's name on it?
It's certainly possible, and from our consortium standpoint, but keep in mind the privacy by design piece. You can give us a wallet if we have in our account number field, if we have a match, there's nothing stopping you from essentially querying our consortium for, well, what else is associated to it? We can't give you exactly what's associated to it because remember, it's all just hashed values, but you can certainly use those associations to perform a risk assessment. So you could say, here's this wallet ID, this IP address, or this email. How many other addresses have been associated to it in the last hour, day, week, month, year, right? What other context do you have around that? And then that can then in turn be leveraged as a risk assessment, right? Have we seen this association before? Has this wallet been seen with this email before? Is it a common association? Has it been seen by other exchanges? Has it been noted as trustworthy? Is the digital identity trustworthy, right? That's what we can certainly provide back, but within the confines of the privacy by design principles that we have, right? Since it's all hashes, you can't just say, here's a wallet, give me all the names you got, right? It's really just associations and corollaries.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's probably more important to link bad actor groups more than PII sometimes. Like the Lazarus, for instance. If we could link all their devices to that massive generation of addresses that they do, 2,000 or 3,000 addresses generated, and they start peeling out all these funds. If we could link that and say within a fraction amount of time, very small, this is all Lazarus right here, and stop those transfers before they happen, by getting that information to exchanges and stuff. That seems like the real big test case. That's when you're really making a difference, right? Gentlemen, we are right at time, and the questions we've answered them all. So on behalf of Merkle Science, I want to say thank you very much for attending our Merkle Meets today. Fantastic information. Zach, Maanas, Nirmal, thank you for coming as well, sir. I always like to see Nirmal on these calls. He's got a wealth of information. The guy's just brilliant. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to the audience for attending. And that's it. Have a wonderful day. Good evening, good day, wherever in the world you are.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Robert, again.
Thank you,
And thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.